There's a couple big Nintendo Switch stories we have to talk about today, starting with a leak we covered yesterday suggesting that new Sega Genesis games would indeed be added to NSO this week. We did see that happen late last night, and we have to have a discussion around what this means for future update schedules when it comes to Nintendo Switch Online games. Then the big talking point for today's video has to do with a graphical technology we have already seen Nintendo adapt to one game that they are working on, and why this technology just got a 2.0 version that could be a game changer for the graphical performance on the base model Nintendo Switch going forward. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below, hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. As I mentioned, guys, we got a couple major stories to discuss today, and we have to kick it off with an update around yesterday's video, which of course we covered Direct Feed Games or Nate the Hate going on Twitter, suggesting that this week, in addition to F-Zero X being added to Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack service in the month of March, that we would indeed also be getting Sega Genesis games. And of course, this did come true, as late last night Nintendo did tweet out the following statement that reads, 3 Sega Genesis games have been made available for Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack members. This is Light Crusader, Super Fantasy Zone, and Alien Soldier. Which are you playing first? Well, I can answer that question for Nintendo, as I will absolutely be playing Alien Soldier first, as I haven't played any of these games from the Genesis era originally. I was not very familiar with any of them, but just from the trailer alone, Alien Soldier has heavy Gunstar Hero vibes, and of course that is one of my all-time favorite Sega Genesis games, especially with the co-op factor, as it's very fun to traverse that with a friend. Unfortunately, it doesn't sound like Alien Soldier does support co-op, but it's still something that has what looks like incredible gameplay, definitely intense boss fights from the looks of it, and I just think that that weapon switch mechanic and fast 2D side-scroll shooter style games is just like, it's definitely down my alley, and I definitely will be excited to check that one out. Light Crusader looks like an interesting one as well. Definitely some dragon themed enemies, an interesting overhead, like kind of off to the side perspective, definitely like a different style camera angle than what you normally see in games, but one that I'll at least give a chance to see if it has any quality gameplay and quality experiences rather to be had. Then Super Fantasy Zone, I don't even know what to think of this game. Like it looks very strange. It's definitely like you're collecting coins, almost like a Mario style, but then you're some kind of ship that's flying around in the air. Like you see a giant fish on screen that's apparently an enemy. Like this game has a lot going on that I really just don't understand what's happening here, but I would be interested to hear from you guys if you're familiar with any of these games and whether or not you're planning on checking them out. Now, one discussion I do want to have around this is of course the fact that we were kind of watching when Nintendo would update the Sega Genesis library again, and the number of games specifically, and I think so far, if you want to try to make a correlation of how frequently we can expect these updates, you might say once per quarter, because it has essentially been 3 months since we saw the last update drop in December. Of course, that was a batch of 5 Sega Genesis games. This is a batch of 3, so as opposed to getting more, I was hoping maybe they would up it to 7 or 8. It looks like we were going down instead into that direction of 3 games. Now, whether or not we get surprise April games will tell us if they're sticking to more of a monthly schedule, which of course up to this point in time they have not. So my bet would be that we get these updates quarterly, and the next one would be in something like June, with anywhere in the realm of 3 to 5 games being added in at a time. Now, that is not guaranteed. Nintendo just always does Nintendo things, and they do their own schedule and whatever they feel like doing at the end of the day. But if we are looking at history, that is maybe one baseline expectation you can kind of set for yourself as we talk about Sega Genesis games getting updates on expansion pack going forward. And then we're just waiting for the day that maybe hopefully we get that Game Boy Advance announcement to be added into the service, as I think if we are looking at ongoing monthly updates or even quarterly for something like the Genesis and the GBA, imagine when you have a new N64 game to check out, the next some new Sega Genesis games to check out on the service, and then some GBA classics that we need to see make it over, like Minish Cap and Metroid Zero Mission and Metroid Fusion and the Golden Sun games. Like, it could be a very fantastic library of games, and I'm personally a very big fan of the direction that Nintendo is headed with the service, as the value is just continuing to be built upon. And then of course we have this Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass DLC that is already available for pre-download, and people who are in Australia or have Australian eShop accounts are already playing these tracks. So it's a very exciting time right now, in my opinion, when it comes to Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack. Quickly, before we wrap up this story, I do want to put out a little heads up that I found online that Nintendo is actually doing a My Nintendo Rewards program. Now, this is specifically for North America, so both the US and Canada can take advantage of this particular offer, but in case if you do have some platinum points saved up, you may may want to log into your My Nintendo account. I'll have it linked down in the description below. They actually put out today that they have N64 classic themed keychains, and I ordered myself. I unfortunately didn't have 1,000 platinum points to order both, but I did go ahead and pick up the Super Mario 64 and Zelda Ocarina of Time keychain classic collection, and they also have a bundle available of Mario Kart 64 and Star Fox 64, which I really wanted that one as well. But hopefully these last for a little while. A lot of these actual physical items that Nintendo sometimes promotes do tend to sell out right away, so if you have some platinum points laying around, unfortunately you do have to pay for shipping. I paid $6.99. That's Nintendo just got the money out of me, whatever. It's still a really cool collectible item that is a limited time thing, so make sure you do check that out if you live in North America and if you can take advantage of it. And let me know in the comments down below whether or not you'll be picking up one of the keychains or both, which one you're going with. And then also the big question I want to hear from you on in the comments down below is your overall thoughts and opinions on Nintendo Switch Online with these additional game updates that we just saw added into the Sega Genesis library, and which ones you are most pumped to hop into and check out. So please share all your thoughts and feelings on all things Nintendo Switch Online and the My Rewards program in the comments down below. Now, the other story we're talking about today has to do with the Nintendo Switch, the graphical performance of this console, a technology that Nintendo has so far used in one game that we know because of a trademark that has been filed and spotted, as you do have to shout out the technology you're using it when you choose to adapt it, and a 2.0 version of this technology that could very easily be implemented into future Nintendo Switch projects that could indeed make these games run better, go to higher resolutions, not necessarily 4K, but it can help it definitely achieve like a solid 1080p 60 frames per second type experience, where it is something that we definitely see lacking today, as the Tegra X1 chip in the Nintendo Switch is clearly dated. I love the Switch through and through. The graphics, you are definitely starting to see that drop off on return on investment on that chip, just because of course we have things like the PS5, the Series X that it is compared to, and while those are dedicated home consoles and not also portable, you just have to realize that the Tegra X1 has been available since 2015, then originally sold in the base model Switch in 2017, and even the OLED refresh did not feature any kind of graphical enhancement when it comes to that chip's capabilities. So we are truly playing off of 2015 graphical performance hardware at this point in time, and as these next gen, or really now current gen games start to come out natively built for the PS5 and the Series X, that gap is starting to really widen. And especially when you talk about things like 4K resolution or just games running at 60 frames per second, the Switch, if it gets a port of a game at all, is typically very underpowered, and you can notice a steep graphical drop off when it comes to a Switch version of the game versus the other guys. Now, the technology in question that we are talking about today is AMD FX Super Resolution, and you all may remember we did a video on Nintendo Switch Sports actually being spotted as a game that Nintendo is using this technology in to essentially get better frame rates and better performance. This is not to be confused with DLSS, which is NVIDIA's technology, and it's actually kind of funny because NVIDIA of course does produce the Tegra X1 and it is their chip, and Nintendo is essentially using their competitor's technology in the Nintendo Switch Sports title, which is available in an open source technology that essentially is targeted to be able to run on any style GPU out there, whether you're a PC player, whether it's something like a Sony or Microsoft game, or even if you were running it on the Nintendo Switch. And Nintendo did indeed choose to adapt that technology as they saw an upside to it, and AMD put out a new video today essentially confirming that the 2.0 version of FSR, which is AMD FX Super Resolution, is now available for developers, and this is actually a very big upgrade in terms of what it was capable of doing before versus what it is now, as they show a lot of side-by-side comparisons, some of which are bumping a 4K natively rendered resolution all the way from running around 50 frames per second going up all the way to over 100 frames per second, and that is obviously a huge jump in performance. And it is something that if Nintendo chooses to implement this technology in games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Breath of the Wild 2, maybe even Splatoon 3, like maybe this needs to be patched in. I'm not going to claim to be a developer and know all the ins and outs of how you would implement a technology in games like this, but I will say that the technology being available to Nintendo, the fact that we've seen them use the 1.0 version of this technology already, this could be something that is another branch for them to extend the life cycle of the current Switch without giving it a graphics upgrade. Although I do very much subscribe to the idea that we're probably getting some kind of refresh or just the next gen Switch in the next couple of years. That said, Nintendo still claims that the Switch is in the halfway point of its life cycle, so we could very easily see a more powerful revision, like something that can run 4K via upscaled via DLSS technology, which does by all accounts still seem to be superior to this FSR 2.0 tech. But when you talk about the big hitter games coming around the corner on the current Switch hardware, like, I don't want to go into a spot of Breath of the Wild 2 where I see the frame rate just completely tank like we saw it do in the Korok Forest. And I just think that, you know, if there's problematic areas in games where it kind of takes you out of the experience and you are seeing a frame rate chug, this is the exact type of technology that could really help enhance that gameplay experience through and through. I also had a big gripe when Sonic Colors Ultimate came to the Switch, as I wanted to pick up that game for the Switch specifically for being able to play it in portable mode, but it couldn't run at 60 frames per second on the Switch. However, the PS4 and Xbox One versions of that game had no problem running at 60 frames per second, and in a fast-paced game like Sonic, that really does make a big difference. So I think this technology is definitely a win. I do want to make it clear that it is not confirmed by Nintendo that they are adapting the 2.0 technology, but the fact that they're using 1.0 in Nintendo Switch Sports, and the fact that there is now a more powerful, better version of the same technology they've already used in a Nintendo Switch game, you can really come to the likely conclusion that this could be a very nice path for them to take with some of their heavier AAA projects that, you know, we will see continue to come down the pipeline, not to mention games like Metroid Prime 4, where we don't even know what that looks like, and that could very well be a cross-generational or something that is being designed with something more like a Switch Pro or Switch 2 in mind. Like, that could very well be the next system launch software. Like, we don't know what the boundaries that they're going to try to push on that game will really look like, as we do know Retro really pushed the boundaries of the GameCube with the graphical fidelity of Metroid Prime 1, and that's why that game still looks great to this day. So all in all, for me, this is good news. The fact that this technology is available to Nintendo, it is open source, they can theoretically implement it on games now and going forward. It just means that at the end of the day, us Nintendo Switch fans, whether we get more powerful hardware or not, can hopefully expect better performance from our Switch titles as we go forward into 5 full years of the base model Switch being sold on the market, and clearly the Tegra X1 being from 2015. So at this point in the video, guys, I want to hear from you personally on all of your thoughts, theories, and opinions around this. Do you think Nintendo adopts this technology and uses FSR 2.0? Do you think it makes a big difference in games and frame rates like I do? Do you think we see more 1080p 60 performance because of it? Or do you think this is something that they may just skip up on and they're really working on whatever they have planned with Nvidia for DLSS technology, and we will just see that performance gain come from better hardware, whether it be the Switch Pro or the Switch 2? So regardless of where you fall on all the issues we talked about in today's video, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Make sure you check out yesterday's video if you haven't already, where we discussed the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe DLC getting a secret graphics update to one track specifically, and the leak that did indeed tell us ahead of time that the Sega Genesis games were planned for this month in NSO expansion pack. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.